Listen, I worship the ground Frank Miller walks on just as much as the next guy, and Dark Knight Returns was a masterpiece that revolutionized the comics industry and gained a whole new fan base, but we don't need every single character to get the exact same Dark Knight Returns treatment. I'm just getting a little tired of the trope where we pull a grizzled old war veteran out of retirement to save us from ourselves because no one else can. It just feels overly defeatist, and I know that there's supposed to be some hope in these stories because somebody will help us even though the rest of the world is so dark and complicated, but I feel like that moment of hope is completely overshadowed by this overwhelming cynicism that there isn't anybody else willing to step up in this time of crisis. So look, all respect to Miller and The Dark Knight Returns, all of that, it's amazing, but we don't need any more. I'm good, thank you. Now that I've thoroughly complained about this comic, let me tell you all the reasons I'm excited about it. Howdy, I'm Kurt Williams, and today we're looking at issue 1 of Daredevil Cold Day in Hell by Cowles, Soule, and Steve McNiven. And I know that when Avengers Twilight came out, I put it on my top 10 books of 2024 list, and I talked about how amazing it was, and it was kind of a Dark Knight Returns for the Avengers. And I can see how this would kind of look like a double standard, but honestly, it's the timing of it all that really ruins it for me, because we just had End of the World Daredevil in Avengers Twilight. And I know that this series was in the works before Avengers Twilight, but it's just bad timing. I got old man superhero fatigue. I can't take any more of this. But I know that in a year or two when I go back to read this series, I'm gonna love it because this really is a treat. Cowles Soule is a great writer. I met him at Dragon Con last year. He's a chill dude. He's written a bunch of crazy good stuff for Marvel. He wrote 8 Billion Genies, which was a great miniseries, and now he's working on Lucky Devils, which is also pretty good. But Steve McNiven, oh man, he's on my top 10 artist list. I love Steve McNiven's work. He was actually the first Marvel artist I ever met at Motor City Comic Con in like 2019 or something. And I'm not often starstruck by an artist, but man, Steve McNiven is the man. He's done legendary work on series like Marvel Knights Fantastic Four. He drew Civil War, which is the highest selling Marvel graphic novel of all time. He did Nemesis, Captain America, Guardians of the Galaxy, New Avengers. So much excellent work. His eye is impeccable. It's so cinematic. It's so sleek and smooth and energetic. He puts in all the right details. Everything is so pretty, but he just hasn't really been around for a while, and I think it's because he likes to work slower than Marvel in particular wants him to work, and I heard him mention that this Daredevil story is his last work for Marvel. But I will buy anything by Steve McNiven, and I will drink it up. However, this issue has a noticeably different style than his usual work. Now, he's got his usual dramatic, cinematic look to everything. The poses are fantastic, anatomy is impeccable, point of view is great, lighting is great, it's fantastic art. But the biggest difference here is the fact that he really only uses one line weight throughout the book. Line weight is something that's very important in comic books in particular because it conveys depth and it organizes the subjects in a panel by giving heavier line weight to the stuff that's closer to you. And McNiven has never shied away from having a particularly thin pen stroke on most of his work, but in this issue it's all very thin and the line looks even a little bit shaky. It doesn't look crisp and processed and clean. It looks organic, almost feeble. It looks like there's a little bit of exhaustion in the lines, and it's that kind of line work that makes me dislike Salvador Larroca's art but thoroughly enjoy Frank Quitely's art, because both of those artists use very thin lines for just about every single line in their drawings. But Quitely's art has this sense of delicacy and precision that is a great contrast to the usually dark subject matter of the stories he draws. Whereas Larroca's art has always felt to me like he just put down a bunch of contour lines and then didn't bother finishing the picture. It has this unfinished kind of sketchy feel to it. So in this issue, the art very narrowly walks this line between shaky and unfinished and delicate and organic, and I think it's only because Steve McNiven is a fantastic artist who has a true in-depth understanding of form that it works out. Now, one of the reasons that this issue is so similar to The Dark Knight Returns is that McNiven is employing Frank Miller's very famous 16-panel grid on the pages, and this is something that's very hard for an artist to pull off, especially nowadays. In the 50s and 60s, when we would cram like 10 panels onto a page and people would still be expected to follow through all that, it wasn't wasn't a big deal that you had so many. But nowadays, it's so common for a comic page to have 4, maybe 5 panels on a page, and even then, a lot of artists can't make those smaller panels, once you get to 5 or 6 panels on a page, to seem cohesive and clear and have any kind of depth in them whatsoever. I'm not at all surprised that Steve McNiven is capable of doing a 16-panel grid because he has a fantastic understanding of composition, but it is worth noting that most artists working for Marvel in particular nowadays would not be able to pull this kind of thing off. And of course, the entire issue is not just 16-panel grids. McNiven uses a bunch of different layout patterns, and of course, we gotta have the giant splash pages once in a while, like this fantastic splash page of Captain America. I mean, really, the detail here, the layout, the shadowing, the atmosphere. This is a fantastic page of art. This is another one of my favorite panels. I love the choice of perspective here, that we have to look through all of these telephone wires. We really get the sense of the surveillance state that people seem to be living in this time period, which, by the way, it seems like a giant war recently happened and like all the superheroes lost their powers or died or something. People keep referring to the DBs, which I'm not sure what that is. I feel like I should have been able to figure out what it means by now, but my only guess is the Daily Bugle, and I don't think that's it. So there's no superheroes, there's an increased police presence, it seems like there's a weird underground movement going on, but they're not revealing much information to us yet. My feelings on the art overall are that, heck, it's Steve McNiven, I'll buy anything he makes, but I get the sense that the style is kind of in tribute to Frank Miller's Dark Knight, or maybe it's just a way to save time. He's not putting as much detail into it. I am a little surprised that issue 1 was 7 pages, especially considering the story itself was just about regular size, maybe a few extra pages, and then we have a bunch of extra pages of script work, which is cool. I love seeing script work, but I don't know if I would want to pay $3 extra per issue for it. And look, if the higher price means that my favorite artists are getting more money, then sure, fine. But we all know that that's probably not the case. And my feelings about the writing overall is that it's good. It's pushing cliche, but at least it feels authentic to the Daredevil character. I don't know who the new villain is yet. I honestly don't care that much. I don't know how much of an impact I'm really expecting from a 3-issue miniseries, even if it is Charles Soule and Steve McNiven, who have proven themselves good at miniseries, but I don't really expect the scope on this one to be all that wide. So you've probably noticed that my biggest complaint about this comic is that it's too similar to a comic that is widely considered to be one of the greatest comics of all time. I guess if I had another complaint, it would be that this doesn't feel like a multifaceted story. It feels like a couple people just talking about how much they love this character. Like, we didn't really meet any other characters that are important to Daredevil. We don't have any subplots going on, unless the 2 thieves that showed up for a minute are gonna be like the new Turk and Grotto pair. I would be excited about that. But I don't feel like this first issue sets us up for a really compelling narrative over the next few issues. It just feels like a chance for these 2 creators to have a lot of fun playing with a really cool character. So in that regard, it is a really good comic. I think a lot of McNiven's work here is pushing the boundaries of what he's done in comics, especially in Marvel Comics. And Soule delivered a solid script on a cool idea that is probably cooler to most people than it is to me. So overall, it's good. You should read it. I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10 because for what it is, it's really good. You don't get many Marvel comics like this, so you really gotta cherish them when they do show up. I've been posting a lot more regularly this week, so if you watched the last few videos, then you already know that I'm gonna be releasing every single shop from Michigan, the unedited footage, 1 shop per day over the next few weeks. It was something like 60 shops. I'm getting pretty tired of not having plans nailed down for the next state of comic shops yet. I'm really working on it, guys. I just gotta get people to respond. So make sure you check out this comic, support your local comic shop, and until next time, I'm Kurt Williams, and you are somebody else.